Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the views and the feedback. Based on that feedback, the topic for today is dealing with anxiety, nerves, adrenaline going into a fight. This was a couple people have asked me to post a video on this. I'll say personally, I never really got nervous when I went into fights. One is knowing that you had the proper preparation. Two is getting the nerves out of your system by doing frequent competitions, smoker fights, tournaments, things like that. Now, granted, some people who do these all the time, they still have nerves. There are things I discuss with my fighters in order to deal with those nerves and anxiety and keep them with a clear head. It's okay to get nervous, it's okay to get anxious and amped up a little bit, but it's how you handle that is the question. Some people, they get amped up and all of a sudden they lose all their technique and are throwing haymakers the whole fight, or they're wasting energy and now they have an adrenaline dump after the first round and they're gassed out and can't go anymore. One thing I do with my fighters is I constantly remind them, stay calm, stay relaxed. I'm verbalizing this beforehand, before the fight, during the fight, in between rounds, right after the announcement's done, during the announcement. The whole entire time I continue to repeat that and I have them look at me, make eye contact, understand that. That way all they hear is just their corner and the dialogue in their head. The other thing I say is have a conversation with yourself in your head, like in your own mind. Keep a dialogue. Talk to yourself throughout the fight. What should I do here? What's he doing now? How do I react to this? What move is my coach talking to me about right now? What do I need to be doing here, there, etc.? Like constantly have a dialogue. Is he dipping his head when I throw this counter? Is he in a wide stance? Is he checking his leg kicks? What opportunities are there? Constantly have something in your head going on. As long as you keep a dialogue, like think about having a conversation with yourself about technique and about what's going on in the current situation. It'll allow you to see it in a third person view in the moment and think more clearly, as opposed to just falling into the moment and getting stuck there and seeing red and everything you forget afterwards. A lot of people get in fights and they forget what happens after the fight, win or lose. Like they don't know what happened. They were just like seeing blood the whole time. They remember bits and clips and they have to watch the video to understand truly what was going on. But the best fighters, the most experienced, the most calm in the cage, those are the ones that can recollect every single thing that happened in the fight, every detail. They should be able to, as soon as the fight's over, recollect everything and discuss it in detail of what was going on. That's a sound fighter. That's a fighter who, whether he had nerves or not, he conquered them, right? He stayed within the situation. He didn't lose himself in that situation. He didn't get over pumped. So that's one way, is the dialogue. And having dialogue with your coaches is another, right? So not only do you have that personal dialogue in your head, but you have a dialogue back with them. I remember in my pro debut, I was talking to my coaches while they were yelling at me. And part of that was something that was trained a lot. And when I was doing rounds and sparring, my coaches would watch those rounds and they'd verbalize commands to me and I would react to them. And I would verbalize back to them. I would talk to them in mid-round all the time while sparring. And same thing happened in smoker fights or exhibition fights and in grappling tournaments. I would always have a constant dialogue going on with my coaches that kept me grounded, that kept me thoughtful, kept me thinking in the process instead of just reacting, right? Yes, I want to react, but I also want to game plan. I want to stick to game plans that we laid out ahead of time that are going to help me win this fight. I don't want to do something that's outside of what I normally would do, but when you have adrenaline, you're not thinking clearly, that can happen. So dialogue with your coaches and, constantly repeating that in not just live form of when we're at the fights, but also coming up to the fights, constantly throughout camp, hearing those commands and hearing some of the repetitive stuff over and over again. I have certain command words that I have with my fighters that maybe our opposite corner doesn't understand, but it's something they react to immediately because we do it all the time and I repeat it over and over and over again during rounds. So it's just automatic and they react to it instantly. It's like they're the robot and I can call out the command and they're I'm just controlling it and they're the ones enacting it in live time. Granted, I want them to be able to do this stuff on their own, and a lot of them can, but at the same time, they're used to hearing it. If they get away from the game plan and something I call out, they react to it when I call for those commands. It's definitely a helpful tool. Another thing is all those other things leading up to it. Sparring isn't enough. Sparring is a different environment. It's with your teammates. They're not trying to kill you. So maybe go get a couple exhibition rounds in at another gym. Or smoker fights before your first AMI debut is huge, right? Nowadays, there's amateur fight cards all over the place, and most guys are coming into amateur cards what pros were back in the day. There's a lot more skill and technique involved now than there used to be. Used to be just, are you tough and can you take a punch, And if you had a little bit of ground, you murdered everybody. It's way different. The times have changed. Everyone has skills going into their amateur debuts. Now, you figure most AMI debuts are already blue belts. They've already had years of training. They've gone through multiple exhibition bouts. Another way of staying active is tournaments. I have a guy fighting for a title tomorrow night, Karan Reed. Check him out. About to be #1 ranked bantamweight in the state, winning that title for Fury. But he did a tournament 2 weeks ago, a grappling tournament. And he does those to stay active. It has eyes on you from the crowd. You're in a pressure environment. People are going hard against you. So wrestling, jiu-jitsu, grappling tournaments are a huge way to stay active and get used to that high intensity and that adrenaline. I think it helps immensely. It keeps you active too. It keeps you motivated for more than one area. I guess lastly would be the warm-up. I don't let my guys warm up too early unless I know they have a gas tank, right? I have a couple guys who wrestled, and like Stos, he just competed at Third Coast. He likes a long warm-up, like 30 minutes plus. Rashal Malik, he used to do like an hour warm-up. But both those guys have incredible gas tanks, and they like to warm up the way they like to warm up, and I trust them. Everyone else that I know doesn't have cardio for days and they can go forever, guess what? I limit their warm-up to usually 15, 20 minutes. They can stretch starting at 30 and get wrapped up, and then 15, 20 minutes maximum, and it's controlled. I'm not burning them out, I'm not blasting their muscles and their lungs. It's just something to get them loose. Earlier in the day, I'll blast their lungs, especially if they had a big weight cut. Then I'll make sure hours and hours before the venue, they blast their lungs up and open them up and get them all breathing back to normal after the weight cut. You don't want your first strenuous activity after a weight cut to be at the venue. So that way they have hours to nap, hydrate, eat, recover before they go to the venue and they feel back to normal. But backstage, no, that's not the case. It's a very short warm-up. Most of these guys, they go in around, they do a 5 or 10 minute warm-up at practice maximum, and then they do the rounds. Why would you throw an hour warm-up in before your fight? Nothing should change. It should be what's normal for you. Now, granted, some people, like I said, are a little older. They need to loosen up more. Okay, but still, don't kill your lungs. Don't kill your muscles. So that's another aspect, though. Short warm-ups, keeping their mind off of it. I don't overcoach them. When it comes to fight week, the last couple weeks, I stopped giving them new techniques. It is review of stuff they've already done. There is no new techniques. I don't discuss any new details or techniques on fight night. Those are non-existent. If they haven't learned it prior to fight night, it's too late, because anything you tell them backstage is just going to flood their mind with BS and start pumping their adrenaline up early, right? I see coaches all the time that have been with their fighters for years, and they're trying to teach them brand new techniques like they're having a seminar backstage an hour or two before the fight. Guess what? It is fight night. It is too late. He will not retain what you're telling him right now. When you start doing that, he is getting too amped up and he's into the fight mode already, which means he remembers zero. Okay? So, review only. Go over details. I will not tell them what to do. I ask them, what do you do here? What do you do there? In this situation, what do you do? If I say this command, what does that mean? I review those things. And that is briefly right before the fight. And again, I'm not putting them through all these drills. I'm getting a little body on them, light work, and that's it. All right? So a couple things to help with adrenaline. Keep that in mind. If you do get amped up and you don't know how to handle it, you better hope you finish in the first round. So keep that in mind. If you ever go into a fight and you cannot control your adrenaline, you better go all out in that first stick, because no matter what, you have nothing left in that second. All right? That's it. I hope this helps out everyone.